everyone. Today we're gonna explain about our final exam papers called State as MNC Vehicle in International Forums. Here are our members. And this are the learning outcomes. First is identify the political economy aspect of multinational companies. Second, describe historical development related to multinational companies. Third, comprehension, explain policy aspect that govern the operation of multinational companies. Fourth, analyze the relation between the state international regime and multinational companies. So, with its great influence on the country's economy and other sectors, of course, the state pays more attention to the extent of MNC. The extent of MNC itself provides various development for the country. So, it's common thing when MNC have goals that are in line with the state or sometimes contrary to the wishes of the state. In addition, because MNC operate by crossing countries, of course, they will have an interest in making it easier. Therefore, MNC need to channel their interest in international forums. To channel their interests, MNC should cooperate with the state so that the state can voice and carry out its interests to international forums between countries in the world.
Moving on to literature review, state is a form of political association or government that is differentiated and not included in other political groups. State is a tool or authority that regulates or controls important issues jointly. MNCs. MNCs are business entities that operate in various countries. This consists of a substantial range of economic activities in each country in which they operate. Next, international forum. International forum is an important tool of a state which aims to overcome global political problems. Neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is an American form of public-private government which has developed as a source of acquisition as an influence of disturbance in a world's quite complex political economic order. Neoliberalism is an economic trend that has been influenced by various views and is an advanced stage of term classical liberalism. Free trade. Free trade is a method of trade transaction in a country without tariff and non-tariff barriers in certain areas of countries that mutually agree. Free trade is another terms for existence of a common market.
Investment protection. Investment protection refers to bilateral and multilateral agreements that assure foreign investors of the legality and valuability of their investment. MNC use investment protection to safeguard their investment and influence global policies. International institution. International institutions include global forums, organizations, and agreements that regulate political and economic relations between nations. MNCs leverage this institution to protect their investment and influence policy in host countries. The WTO. The WTO, MNC advocate for favorable investment regulation, intellectual property, the right protection, and trade liberalization. They often dominate the negotiation with developed nations acting as proxies for MNC interests. The IMF loan conditions sometimes benefit MNCs at the expense of developing nations, leading to increased poverty and inequality. MNC significantly influence IMF decision through lobbying and political connection. And the last one is the World Bank. The World Bank has been criticized for aligning with the economic and political interests of developed nations and MNCs. Over 60% of World Bank funded project contracts are awarded to business from G7 countries, and its policies can neglect the needs of local communities.
Next, we're going to talk about theory that we use, which is the neoliberalism. So what is neoliberalism? Neoliberalism is an ideology and policy model that emphasizes the value of free market competition, most commonly associated with laissez-faire economic. It prioritizes minimal state intervention in economic and also social affairs, advocating for a free market as the most efficient means of allocating resources. Neoliberalism also promotes the freedom of trade and capital movement, underscoring the belief that sustained economic growth is essential for human progress. Some of the key features of neoliberalism that we used is sustained economic growth. Second one is free market. The third one is minimal state intervention. And the last one is freedom of trade and capital movement.
Okay, so trade liberalization. Trade liberalization is reduction of trade barriers between countries, and there is a strong belief that economic growth will increase. Trade liberalization does not require a zero or even very low import tariffs. However, it is possible to have a liberalized economy with very high tariffs. Almost all studies, universally from the past decade, say that trade liberalization does increase the average productivity in the sectors affected. All these findings are certainly good news for poverty alleviation because higher productivity is the only basis for sustainable income increases and economic growth. For example, state agreements, conferences, meetings, forums, and etc. Therefore, neoliberalism is closely linked to trade liberalization and vice versa. So most experts agree that NAFTA has brought economic benefits for the three countries on average. The stock of foreign direct investment (FDI) in Mexico grew sixfold during this period, from $15 billion to more than $100 billion, while FDI from Mexico to the US grew by more than 1,200%. The ability to move goods smoothly across borders enabled substantial efficiency gains in supply industries, such as automobile production. The adoption of NAFTA brought greater access to quality products at lower prices for the average consumer across the three countries. Supporters of the agreement point to estimates that place the number of jobs created by NAFTA at 14,200,000 export-related jobs created every year, which pay 15 until 20% more than the jobs that were lost. After 24 years later, the three countries renamed the agreement as the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA.
Okay, next, investment protections. In order to guarantee and protect the rights and obligations of investors and investments from unwanted risks, it is deemed necessary to establish protections and legal certainty for investors and investments. The protections and legal certainty are outlined and regulated in an international investment agreement in the form of bilateral, regional, or multilateral agreements. However, we will only discuss in depth about bilateral investment treaties, BETs. BETs are legally binding international agreements between two countries, in which each country undertakes on a reciprocal basis to comply with rules set out in the agreement in its dealing with investors from the other participating country. The protections provided by BETs are accompanied by a very strong international arbitrations mechanism that allows investors to file a lawsuit directly against the country for allegedly violating international legal protections. There are several standard rules in BETs, which is first, national standard of treatment, second, fair and equitable standard, third, most favored nation treatment, fourth, full protections and security. Basically, the four clauses that I have mentioned require the state to provide non-discriminatory, fair treatment, and provide comprehensive protections and security to foreign investors. And the last clauses that is interesting to discuss is the dispute settlement clause. The dispute settlement clause indicate that the countries involved want to give investors the opportunity to defend the rights provided in the BET without relying on the diplomatic protections of investors' home country. The rule for resolving dispute involve two subjects of dispute, which is investor-state dispute and the state-state dispute. Investor-state dispute are resolved through International Center for Settlement Dispute, or ICCISD. ICCISD is the institution that is responsible for international arbitrations between investors and host states in BETs. ICCISD was established to handle arbitrations and conciliations for investments dispute. ICCISD is not the only institution that investors use to sue host countries that violate the rules. But however, investors usually prefer ICCISD because the enforcement provisions of arbitral awards under ICCISD conventions are more favorable compared to the other enforcement. One example of BETs is agreement between Indonesia and Singapore to promote and protect industry, which was signed in 2019 and will take effect in 2021.
Okay, so the next is role of international institutions. The first one is World Trade Organization, or WTO. The presence of the WTO at this time is closely related to the General Agreement of Tariffs and Trade, or GATT. So GATT is an extraordinary breakthrough built on two new ideas, namely the desire for multilateralism and institutionalism. GATT held 8 rounds of negotiation, each focusing on reducing tariffs and addressing other trade issues. These rounds were held periodically to reduce tariffs and other barriers to international trade. The creation of an immense new body of international law relating to trade culminated in the Uruguay round. Working groups and negotiators did further work, and the name was changed from the Multilateral Trade Organization to the World Trade Organization, or WTO, which began its existence on January 1st, 1955. The WTO is a form of neoliberalism in the form of interdependence and economic cooperation. The case study is the DS-316 dispute between the US or Boeing and the EU or Airbus.
Okay, next I will discuss about the role of international institutions, which is IMF and World Bank. Neoliberalism views that the existence of international organizations and cooperations between countries can act as a forum for peace and prevent conflicts, as well as play a role in dealing economic, gender, religious, and human rights issues. Neoliberalism rejects arguments that state its existence is a tool for large countries to intervene in other countries. Neoliberalism has an argument that international organizations fully play an independent role and become a forum for countries to cooperate with each other in the military, social, political, and economic sectors. The success of neoliberalism can be seen through the role of the IMF, which was able to restore South Korea's economy during the 1997 monetary crisis. Although South Korea is an independent country, the monetary crisis resulted in a significant setback. We can see South Korea's debt from this graph. It can be seen that South Korea's debt soared from 1979 to 1977. This is where the role of IMF became more important for South Korea, where the IMF offered a loan of $50 billion to South Korea with various conditions. One of these requirements is that South Korea must carry out fundamental reforms of the economic sector, such as strict fiscal policy, capital account and trade liberalizations, and labor market reforms. In utilizing IMF loans, South Korea established multinational corporations, MNC companies, such as electronics companies, one of which is Samsung Products, which is one of the best-selling electronic products in the world. This is one of South Korea's strategies to restore domestic economic stability. With the MNC company, it can encourage export activities to other countries such as China and India while increasing revenue for South Korea. The economic strategy carried out by Korea under the Kim Dae-sung government was effective because South Korea managed to get out of the economic crisis. Thus, it can be concluded that the interventions of the IMF and World Bank in helping South Korea recover its economy considered quite effective. This success is not only due to financial assistance from the IMF and World Bank, but government efforts and innovations from MNC have also facilitated economic recovery.
So, in conclusion, to address their interest in international forums, MNC need the state as the addressing party. In addition, in this day and age, the role of MNC in the state is very large, especially in the economic sector. For economic interest, there are times when MNC and the state have the same interest, and other times they are different. For this reason, it is not uncommon for MNC to do or utilize things such as lobbying and political connection. There are several things that are usually done by the state for the benefit of MNC, namely the reduction or elimination of tariff barriers and submitting various cooperation proposals or requests for changes in international rules to various international organizations. All of these things are certainly done on the basis of state interests, in which there are also the interests of MNC represented by the state. That's all for all. Thank you.